Howdy, Pards. Welcome back. I'm going to switch gears here and do a different video than what I've been doing here on the dogs. In the background, you can see here it says Constitute. This is the Constitution of the United States. Article 2, Section 1. Article 2 of the United States Constitution literally constitutes the executive branch. How is the president elected? It's mind-boggling to me why this is so difficult for the news media to understand. But they refuse to accurately report it, and I keep getting a lot of questions on this. I'm a teacher. I teach this stuff all the time. Even after I teach it ad nauseum, that the kids still don't remember it. But I still get a lot of them, which read the Constitution in class here on Constitution Week, September 17th. Still, they don't remember. So we're going to go over this. Article 2, Section 1, and the 12th Amendment both have to do with the Electoral College. The Electoral College is the system by which the President of the United States is elected, not direct vote. It's up to the state, as we will see, to determine how the electors that the state has vote. Furthermore, there is no guaranteed blanket right to vote in the United States Constitution. The United States of America is not a democracy. It's not supposed to be a democracy. It is a republic. I know our politicians almost universally refer to it as a democracy. They're doing you a disservice by doing so. The author of the United States Constitution, James Madison, goes to great lengths in the most famous of the Federalist Papers, which are a series of essays published in New York newspapers to try to get people to ratify the Constitution. In Federalist number 10, he goes to great lengths to explain why the United States is not a democracy, but is rather a republic. Democracy is the essence of tyranny, according to Mr. Madison. So I probably do some videos on that, because we're gonna be reading that too here in the not too distant future. All right. Now, Article 1 of the Constitution was about the legislative branch of Congress, which consists of two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Article 2 is about the executive. Article 3 is about the judiciary. Article 4 is about relations among states. Article 5 is about how the Constitution can be amended. Article 6 has several things in it, but most famously the so-called Supremacy Clause, that the Constitution is supreme. And Article 7 is about the ratification of the Constitution itself. It took 9 of the original 13 states to ratify it for it to take effect. It happened in April 1789. All right, let's go to the text here. The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. This is how the President is elected. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct. So the state legislature determines how the electors are appointed and how they vote. A number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress, but no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So the number of electors that a state has is arrived at by adding together how many representatives they have in Congress, which is based on the population of the state, and how many U.S. senators they have. All states have 2 U.S. senators. This was the great compromise between the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan of the Constitution, and is a prime example of how the United States is not a democracy. It is a republic. Now, the technical definition. In a democracy, the citizens themselves make the laws. In a republic, elected representatives make the laws. It's a very important distinction. Those two never the twain shall meet. They're literally 2 different forms of government. So someone who tries to tell you that a democracy is a republic is like someone trying to tell you that a square is a circle. They're 2 different forms. They cannot be the same. It's not intended to be a democracy. You'd have to literally throw out the Constitution and rework the whole system in order to turn it into a democracy. All right. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for two persons, of whom one at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves, and they shall make a list of all persons voted for and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify, and transmit sealed to the seat of government of the United States at Washington, D.C. Directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate is none other than the Vice President of the United States. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be the President, if the number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And if there be more than one who shall have such majority and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose by ballot of them for President. And if no person have a majority, then from the five highest on the list, said House shall, in like manner, choose the President. But in choosing the President, the votes shall be taken by states, and the representatives from each state having one vote. A quorum for the purpose shall consist of a member or members for 2/3 of the Senate, or 2/3 of the states, excuse me. And a majority of all states shall be necessary to a choice. In every case, all after the choice of the President, the person having the greatest number of votes of the electors shall be the Vice President. But if there should remain two or more who have equal votes, the Senate shall choose from them by ballot the Vice President. Now, the 12th Amendment modifies this, and we're going to read the 12th Amendment. It's essentially the same, except that on the ballots that the Electoral College cast, that they seal and send to Washington, D.C., they have to make plain who they're voting for President and Vice President, so they're just putting down two people. The reason for this is that the 1800 election between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams resulted in a tie, went to the House to break the tie, and they had to vote numerous times to break the tie. So, and the reason why is because it wasn't clear who was being voted for president and who was being voted for vice president. Eventually, Jefferson won, and then they amended the Constitution to clarify that matter. Okay, the key points to remember here. The legislature of the state gets to determine how their votes are cast. Now, from roughly the time of Andrew Jackson, who was elected president in 1828, until 2016, all states of which I am aware awarded all of their electors to whomever won the most votes in their state. So they allowed citizens to vote indirectly for president, and they gave all of their electors to whoever won the most votes in the state. Not necessarily a majority, because there are almost always, I can't think of a time when this wasn't the case, more than two people running for president. And to be president, you must win a majority of the Electoral College. That's the reason why the states award, or traditionally have awarded, all of their electors to whoever gets the most votes in that state, to maximize the influence that the state has in the election. Now, there have been several times, well, three times that no one won a majority in the Electoral College: 1800, 1824, 1876. The House votes on the president at that point. That could happen this time. Nancy Pelosi's already talking about it. Now, if the House votes on president, they do not do so as individual House members. They vote as a state delegation. So the way that's going to break down is, we can use Texas as an example. The majority of Congress persons from the state of Texas are Republicans. So they would vote for the Republican candidate in that instance. And the one vote that Texas has as a House delegation would go to the Republican candidate. Now, there are more states right now that have more Republican representatives than Democrats. But keep in mind that in the House of Representatives, they're all up for re-election. Every single one of them are up for re-election on the same day that the presidential election occurs in November. They're always, every 2 years, they're always all up for re-election. So the composition of that can change. So, but there's a good possibility that that eventuality could come to pass. Now, another thing to keep in mind, and this will be mentioned later on, I believe, in the 12th Amendment, is if we don't know who won the election, and this is a very real possibility because of this mail-in business, if we simply don't know who won the election, and we get to Inauguration Day, which is January 20th, 2021, then we're going to have a temporary president. That temporary president is going to be the Speaker of the House, which right now is Nancy Pelosi. Again, that's not guaranteed she'll be Speaker of the House in January because House may switch. I think, and right now, I mean, polls indicate that the Democrats will maintain control of the House of Representatives, but polls are often wrong. So who knows? But the Speaker of the House will act as president until such time as it can be determined who won the election. All right, let's go read the 12th Amendment. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots the person voted for as vice president. So that's the main change between what we just read in Article 2, Section 1, and what's modified here in the 12th Amendment. And they shall make distinct list of all persons voted for as president and of all persons voted for as vice president and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of government of the United States, directed to the president of the Senate, who is again the vice president of the United States. The president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. Now, as most people know, that's 270. Got to get to 270. It's 438 votes in the Electoral College now, and 270 constitutes a majority. It is possible it could work out where you could have a tie at 269 each, and if that were to happen, then again, the House of Representatives would choose the president. This has happened 3 times in U.S. history: 1800, 1824, 1876. Almost happened in 2000, but the old Supreme Court stepped in. That's not good. You don't need the courts taking over stuff here. All right. If no person have such a majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers, not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. So they got to have at least 2/3 of them present. I can't imagine them not being present. That even if there are only 2/3 of them present, it still takes a majority of votes from the states, which would be 26, to win the presidency. There again, you could theoretically end up with a tie, although Washington, D.C. does get to vote in the Electoral College. So that goes to 51 right there. Still take 26 to have a majority in that instance. And if the House of Representatives shall not choose a president whenever the right of choice shall devolve upon them before the 4th day of March, it's now the 20th day of January. Next following, then the vice president shall act as president, and in case of the death or other constitutional disability of president, the person having the greatest number of electors appointed, And if no person have such a majority, then from the two highest numbers on the list, the Senate shall choose the vice president. A quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of senators, and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice. Now, if the Senate votes on the vice president, they don't do it as a state delegation. They're voting as individual senators, and it's just a simple majority vote. No person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. Now, the other thing that impinges upon this is the 25th Amendment, which sets up the order of succession. And it's not stated there that it's the Speaker of the House. It says that Congress may by law establish further order of procession, basically, to the office of the President. And Speaker of the House is number 3. So that's why it's possible that the Speaker of the House could act as president if we don't know for sure who won. Now, you know what's going to happen here. You know, if Biden loses, he's going to court and he's going to use his mail-in stuff. We don't know that all the ballots are in. All the ballots don't have to be in for the Electoral College to cast their votes, Uncle Joe. Now, are you going to get federal judges to actually follow the Constitution? That's a big question. My guess is probably not. They've been on autopilot for so long and not following the Constitution that the idea that they would now go back to it seems ludicrous to me. But I guess it's possible that they could. Likewise, if you've got all this stuff from these mail-in ballots, it's going to be difficult to avoid fraud in this instance. And Trump loses because of this mail-in ballot business. See him taking it to court too. And so there's a good chance that, it's going to end up with federal courts going up to the Supreme Court, stepping in here. Now, this is not good. John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, does not want to be put in this position. He does not like this type of stuff. He likes to think that the Supreme Court's some pristine institution that's above politics. Of course, that's nonsense. But it is true that it's not good to have the Supreme Court deciding this, and it shouldn't be deciding these things. You should just go back to the Constitution. It clearly states the electors are supposed to cast their ballots in December. It doesn't matter that all the votes have or haven't been counted. I mean, this is not an ongoing deal. I mean, you're not voting every day for president. It's a one-time deal. There's no guarantee that all votes have to be counted. It doesn't say that in there. It says the state legislatures may direct. So, as the states direct, so should the voters of the Electoral College vote and get us a president. But we can't get people to understand that we actually have a constitution and that it really means something, that we're actually supposed to follow it. They don't want to follow it. They want to make up the rules as they go in the name of democracy. The problem with this is this leads to instability. That's exactly what Madison talks about in Federalist Number 10, which leads to tyranny. So this is why you need the rule of law, not the rule of the demos, democracy. And demos means mob in Greek, which is what we are quickly devolving to here. So that's how the president is supposed to be elected. Well, unfortunately, it's almost guaranteed that that's not how it's going to happen in this upcoming election. And this is not a good turn in the history of the United States. Now, certainly there have been times in the past in the history of the United States we had similar problems. Very strong factionalism, discord, resulting in public unrest, that kind of stuff. That's not new, but it hasn't been that way in a long time in the United States, and it's not something that you want to have happen, obviously. But in any event, that is how it's supposed to happen. You can bet your bottom dollar that as the news media reports on this stuff, they're not going to talk about this at all. Not at all. They're not going to go and remind people of the fact that, hey, it's the Electoral College that elects the president, and this is how it's supposed to happen. They're going to tell you, oh, and democracy means we got to get everybody's vote, and if that means that they mailed in 50 votes, we're going to count all 50 votes. Really? That's what's coming. And no, the American people have themselves to blame for this. They have allowed the news media to dupe them into believing things that have nothing to do with the Constitution of the United States. And so, there's an old saying that people get the government they deserve, and so it is. We have devolved in our political education and the political processes to the point that it, it's mob rule. I mean, that's essentially the direction it's going. There doesn't seem to be any way to reverse that decline. Historically speaking, there has never been a culture that I can think of that entered into decline and then got out of it. You may forestall it, slow it down for a while, but it's just like the old life cycle. It goes in one direction, and that's toward death. And so it is with cultures and political communities. It goes toward one direction, and that's toward the end. And that's unfortunately, that's the direction that's clearly pronounced itself here. All right, so that's the Electoral College. I'll see you in the next video.